Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We're being invaded. The invasion of illegal immigrants.
The fact of the matter is that this is an attempted invasion of our country.
We had all these from Central America flooding the border.
Multiculturalism isn't real. This is really destroying one culture and replacing it with the new foreign culture.
This is not migrants coming into the country. This is nothing short of an invasion.
Democrats who want to replace you, the American voters, with newly amnestied citizens.
This is a government-sanctioned invasion of our country.
An invasion. The New York Times is taking a deep dive into the conservative media world and found that the confessed shooter echoed many of the words of its most prominent stars. The Times found striking overlap when comparing his 2,300-word diatribe to transcripts from several shows on the right. For example, the confessed El Paso shooter complained about a Hispanic invasion of Texas. That echoes the language of Fox News hosts Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, radio talk show host Rush Limbaugh, and Ann Coulter and Jeanine Pirro's show, saying, quote, "You can shoot invaders." According to the Times, references to an immigrant invasion appeared on more than 300 different Fox News broadcasts. Joining us now, one of the New York Times reporters on that story, Jeremy Peters.
Jeremy, it's striking, the language referenced on the front page of the New York Times today and the link to the El Paso shooter. There is also a very short timeline in many instances between the number of times that these words have been used on Fox. We just saw a few instances of them. And sometimes a very short timeline between that language, that type of language, and tweets from the President of the United States directly reflecting the language.
Yeah, exactly, Mike. It's not a one-way street here. Sometimes the president's words inform Fox News hosts. Sometimes Fox News hosts' words inform the president, and he goes out and repeats them. The result is this really toxic political discourse we have, where it's now become normal to refer to immigrants, migrants, as invaders, as some type of hostile enemy force that needs to be taken out and stopped at the border, or, in the words of one pundit, maybe even shot. And how routine this has become, how common this has become, was really striking to us when we reviewed 5 years of transcripts from several news networks and radio programs, talk radio on the right, where it's not only a regular occurrence to refer to them as an invading force, but also that the motivation behind their coming here is not out to escape the horrible conditions in their homeland, but it's to replace white Americans. And that's where this intersects with the El Paso Killers manifesto. When you look at this talk of replacement, which is also startlingly common in right-wing media and has great overlap with this manifesto.
Hey, Jeremy, it's Jonathan Lemire. Obviously, the president's Twitter account and his words, and certainly Fox News, are the biggest platforms for pushing forward this type of language to describe immigrants. But talk to us a little bit more about where else you could find it. Certainly places that, whether it's Breitbart or Sinclair, sort of rising outlets that have a lot of audience, particularly online, where someone like this alleged shooter in El Paso clearly spent a lot of time and posted his manifesto in the hours before opening fire.
That's exactly right, Jonathan. This is not exclusive to any one particular right-wing outlet. This was broad. This was almost across everywhere we looked on the right in media, whether it's from Sinclair, whether it's talk shows like Rush Limbaugh's, websites like the Gateway Pundit appeared on the Drudge Report. You're talking about websites, shows, talk shows on the radio, on television, that have the potential to reach tens of millions of people a week.
Jeremy, this is Eddie. Found the article fascinating. Talk to me a little bit more about this ecosystem of hate. You're using this language of people on the right, but we know that that is a kind of spectrum. But what we're seeing is it's collapsing with this language, right? So the alt-right or white nationalists who use replacement language, and then you have Fox News using replacement language. So this is in some ways peeling the curtain back of this ecosystem of hate. It's not just simply the loud ones, it's the folks who are also mainstream. So talk a little bit more about what this means in terms of the nature of the languages of hate and fear that circulate in the country today.
That's exactly right, Eddie, because it has migrated from the fringe to the mainstream in conservative rhetoric. And the idea of this replacement, I think, is the best example of that, because that's something that originated with a white supremacist book about this supposed white genocide that could occur if migrants keep flowing into places like Europe. And what the El Paso killer did, what the killer who shot up the synagogue in Pittsburgh did, they referred to this invasion, and explicitly in the El Paso killer's case, referred to this idea of replacement several times, that the Hispanic race was going to replace people like him.
It is Tuesday, the 13th of August of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A little bit, just a scant dash, a pinch, way less than a pinch actually, of smoked hot Hungarian paprika makes all the difference in the world. Oh, and warning, folks, roasted corn is in the Tarrytown Chowder. Otherwise, it would not be Tarrytown Chowder. Well, looks like the Epstein murder? The suicide? What is it? We don't know yet. The autopsy report, preliminary, has come out, apparently inconclusive. Of course, we knew that would happen. Still trying to hear about the security closed-circuit TV tapes. There are, Diddy. And we know that. And if there were, you know that Barr's got him. You can't trust that guy. I mean, the first thing he came out said it was suicide. Well, we know how he handled the Mueller report. You can't trust that guy. That guy's Tom Hagen. Well, we'll see if he's Tom Hagen. I think Tom Hagen was a little bit more adept, but we'll see. Barr, I'm sure, was promised a Supreme Court position, and that's why he's doing what he's doing? I don't know. It's all out in the open, so apparently it's okay. All right, well, that's still pretty much, that story pretty much still dominates, even though that that nuke missile explosion in Russia. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Get out of the IMF. Next thing you know, IMF, I think it was the IMF. Next thing you know, we're in an arms race. Well, we were already in an arms race because these technologies don't come to the point where you can have a nuke accident. right off. It takes some time to get to the point where you can have a missile just blow up and spread nuke material everywhere. What is interesting about that news story is what is reported in Russia to a lot of the Russians, who are pretty much like the Fox viewers here. There aren't a complete audience for Russian news there in Russia, of course. But it's funny how the same dynamic works. And except this time, when it comes to reality, you can fake the news all you want. Oh, no, that's not nuke material. Well, then why are these people dying of nuke poisoning? We're running out of iodide. And remember, it's iodide, not iodine. Okay? Be clear. It's the iodide that helps your thyroid. Iodine cleans bacteria out of a cut. So, I expect traces of that material to be floating our way soon, doesn't it always? Okay, we have some other news on the environment. We have some news about Duncan Hunter. Yeah, Beach Boy Duncan Hunter. Uh-huh. That guy. We'll talk a little bit more about him at the chef's table. And we got some news about Bolsonaro down there in Brazil as well. And the State Department, they have some problems. And they've had some problems ever since this guy took over. Deconstruct the administrative state. Next thing you know, the world could be falling apart, and other actors on the world stage will step up to fill the vacuum. I presume that since we have been absolutely insulting every ally that we have, that it's going to be an adversary that will, fill the vacuum because of all the love letters sailing back and forth. Which reminds me, what's up with North Korea and all of their escalating missile nuke technology also? Love letters. Give him a love letter. Saud sent him a love letter. He gave them some nuke technology too. In fact, Khashoggi, dismembered, was pretty much the way to close the deal. He's in a different world now, and he gets to act the way he always wanted to act. Okay, people voted for him, and their argument is that, hey, if we wanted a mobster, it is our constitutional right. Really now? Really? Which reminds me about the gun debate, because that goes on even on the local level, because we got a lot of, I'm sure everybody around the country has a bunch of crazy gun nuts in their neighborhoods. And in our community, in our state, it's open carry, and people like to intimidate other people all the time. And it always strikes me as funny, perverse funny, whenever you just simply mention sensible gun laws. The next thing that they're talking about is jackboot government Nazis, or what they think are Nazis, kicking down the door and taking every single gun they have. Just sensible gun laws. I could bring up the argument that I brought up when I was first confronted with this line way back in the day, and that was only those who have really no criminal intent don't have anything to worry about, don't you know? So there is that. So as this gun debate rages, and it encompasses very many different types of threads of a conspiracy, which I will specify as being of the legal nature, not of the crazy mind. Because there's a lot of people gone to jail. Gun nuts with Russian connections. We reported yesterday about the Texas secessionist movement. Their flag is flying in Moscow. The guy who was running the California secessionist movement hightailed it out of the country. Where did he go? Well, he went to Russia. With his Russian wife, I might add. So maybe he had, an incentive. Indeed. The Oregon secessionist movement, INOF has been pumping money into that group also. Bring it up. It's like calling them racist. They never like being called racist. And they'll come back and call you a racist while using really a lot of terrible racist memes. They always reveal who they are. So we have these gun nuts who, in many cases, I gotta be honest with you, harbor some sort of latent bent towards fascism and Nazism. But don't call them that. Antifa, after all, is the real enemy. I mean, look at him. Look at him. When I hear Antifa, I think of Elie Weisenthal. That's who I see as an anti-fascist. I know that they see the insane clown posse or, hippies. They see hippies. All right. I got to tell you, hippies don't fight like that. All right. Anarchists do. So really what they're seeing are anarchists. That can be for good or ill. I tend to disregard anarchy as being, without enough order. All right. I used to have an axiom back in the day that those who were the loudest and most forceful, vociferous advocates of anarchy tended to be the least capable of surviving it. Fighting in the streets is not an indication whether you can survive anarchy by being an anarchist. I don't think so. I like to take a different tact, one that has been tried and true, and that's to sue the hell out of these groups. Antifa should have a legal arm where you sue the Proud Boys, you sue the 3%ers, you sue the Oath Keeper sheriffs, you sue the KKK, and you sue the neo-Nazis. Metzger, who came from San Diego and went into Oregon to train his shock troops for the race war that was sure to come because they were trying to stoke it, in which his minions killed a black guy in Portland, beat down, and then bragged about it. He and his group got sued and run out of the state. I like doing that first. I don't like to think that we're at the point where we actually have to fight in the streets. Historically, that's shown to be necessary now, hasn't it? Well, the pen is always mightier than the sword, and money doesn't talk, it swears. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, of course, the El Paso killer echoed the incendiary words of conservative media stars. Word for word. But yeah, let's ban Pac-Man and Grand Theft Auto 2, because it's really just too violent. Mario Brothers, jeez, those guys hit each other. Oh my gosh. On the rest of the menu, Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue mocked struggling farmers for whining about Trump's trade war, and I have to say, the farmers were not happy. Oregon joined a multi-state lawsuit to block the T-Mobile Sprint merger. 15 in the District of Columbia and counting. And the State Department is slammed by its Inspector General for the lengthy hiring freeze that has compromised the safety of Americans at home and abroad. Well, I keep saying, unoccupied, vacant property is always more valuable. Deliver it vacant to the hostile foreign power, it's always more valuable. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where criminally indicted GOP Representative Duncan Hunter struggled to explain his ties to a white supremacist. Oh, he wants to delay his trial for corruption from September 10th to some later date, like maybe after the election. And Brazilian federal prosecutors filed a court injunction to bar Bolsonaro's son as ambassador to the United States. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link right there by the social media scroll. Kelly Lincoln monitors that for us, and thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the social media scroll chat room link area, right there in the leftish at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. You will then notice our Patreon link, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. We have been doing this for 8 years, and happy birthday to Daily Co's Radio, Kagro in the Morning. They are celebrating 8 years of broadcasting themselves, so hey. And shortly after that birthday, they began over here on Netroots Radio, and we're happy to have them. Thank you. We are all part of that grand effort of electing more and better Democrats now, aren't we? And if you could, please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your efforts to have allowed us to continue broadcasting and resisting. We are Resistance Radio. We were tasked way back, even before the Constitution of the United States was drafted, let alone, debated, to, really stand up, investigate, be the fly in the ointment, the monkey in the wrench. That's right, and we've been fulfilling that responsibility, and we would be unable to do that without your generosity. Because truly, you are our biggest contributor, and without you, we would be unable really to pay our bills. And that's very important. We believe in contractual agreements. That's right. Even when it's just a handshake, let alone when it's written down on paper. Thank you for allowing us to fulfill all of those duties and responsibilities. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @JusticePutnam, and I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I scramble to get the links out on social media, so it's just easier. I know. We are the hardest working internet radio station on the internet. We truly are. No brag, just fact. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so @CookbookWest. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. We're right there down in the W's. Okay. One thing I wanted to mention about the gun debate. We keep hearing this argument that people need to arm themselves to protect themselves from the government, and that was what was laid down in law back in the day. Of course, this idea that individuals could have guns guns of war, weapons of war, rather than those stored in an armory, only changed because of Heller. The gaslighting just is so perturbing, especially when people don't even know what Heller is. And Fat Tony was part of that. Of course, Fat Tony did lay down some edicts that even the gun nuts don't want to accept. But we need to remember one thing. Historically, Those people who were carrying their weapons home or storing them in an armory were not fearful of a government that they were fighting to establish would attack them. It was easier to muster the militia to fight the enemies of the state. And no one then thought that their own government would be the enemy. Please. As if the physics of that would really work out if the government decided to, come down hard on you. I don't care how many flamethrowers and missile launchers you got. It's not going to work. And if you're looking for original intent, please, people who are fighting to establish a representative democracy were going to keep their guns because that representative democracy would tell them, we want more representative democracy and we're going to, I don't know what. The only people that worried about their government coming hard down on them, were, I don't know, patriots. Yes, patriots against the loyalists of the British Crown. Okay, and that was no longer their government. So that argument just always killed me. Let's get on with this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, Sonny Perdue. Yeah, I don't know. I was on another one of these local message boards where the more virulent right wing maintains that liberals just can't do humor. Really? I don't know. I've seen some of the comedians on your side. Dennis Miller. Eee. People think he's funny. Even when he did the Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live. I didn't think it was that great. There are a couple that did it way better before Dennis Miller took over. Dan Desai Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this first offering. Farmers are filing for bankruptcy at record rates, but Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue mocked farmers for whining about Trump's trade war. What do you call two farmers in a basement? Perdue joked with a group of Minnesota farmers last Wednesday. A wine cellar, Perdue said, eliciting boos from the crowd. Perdue's joke came 2 days after China announced it will stop buying all U.S. ag products in retaliation for Trump slapping an additional 10% tariff on all products from China. As Perdue makes jokes at the expense of farmers and Trump throws up even more roadblocks, farmers are struggling to earn a living. There's no incentive to keep on farming, except one farmer's invested everything they have in farming, and it's hard to walk away, farmers said. And at the event where Perdue made his joke, farmers tried to tell the administration about their pain. Minnesota Corn Growers Association President Brian Thalman admonished Perdue and the Trump administration for downplaying the hard times faced by him and other farmers. We're not starting to do great again, Thalman said. Things are going downhill very quickly. Perdue's response was to chide the farmers for becoming too dependent on one market, China, for their product. Oh, you're picking winners and losers? I thought, what? Wait. Farmers are not the only ones feeling the economic hardship Trump's trade war is causing. Consumers across the country are paying more for shoes, toys, washing machines, and plenty of other products. Even Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell admits Trump's trade war is nothing more than a tax hike on Americans. Economists at Goldman Sachs say the trade war is so devastating to the U.S. economy that it could lead to a recession. You know, it took a little over, 260 some odd years for the United States to rack up $4 trillion in debt. Trump just added another $4 trillion on that in 2. Rather than take the concerns of consumers and farmers seriously, Trump's top agriculture official is cracking jokes and mocking those who are struggling. Because, look, this is the motto throughout this whole Trump administration. Cruelty is the reason. Sheila Dang of Reuters brings us this next offering here. In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. Oregon has joined a multi-state lawsuit to block the merger of U.S. wireless carriers T-Mobile US Inc. and Sprint Corp. The New York Attorney General's office, which is leading the lawsuit along with California, said on Monday yesterday. 15 states and D.C. are now seeking to stop the merger, which the states argue is anti-competitive and will cost their residents more than $4.5 billion annually. The lawsuit most recently added Texas, whose attorney general is the first Republican to join the lawsuit. Well, strange bedfellows indeed. Oregon's addition to our lawsuit keeps our momentum going and ensures that there isn't a single region of this country that doesn't oppose this anti-competitive mega merger, New York Attorney General Letitia James said in a statement. The U.S. Justice Department signed off on the deal last month on the condition that the carriers divest Sprint's prepaid phone business to satellite TV provider Dish to create a fourth U.S. wireless carrier. T-Mobile has said it does not intend to close the merger while the state's litigation is ongoing. Of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. For nearly 18 months, the Trump administration imposed an agency-wide hiring freeze on the State Department. Now, a report from the department's Inspector General shows that freeze had a profound effect on the functioning of the agency. Feature, not a bug. Not just in this reporter's opinion, by the way. The Inspector General's overall conclusion was that the freeze was put in place generally rather than with the goals of improving the operations of the agency in mind, the report said. In other words, the freeze was just designed to cut staff and had nothing to do with helping the agency because, listen, they had to deconstruct the administrative state. And what more administration is there than the State Department? The Inspector General also said that the freeze policies evolved continuously over the 16 months of the freeze. There was no explanation as to the strategic goals of the freeze and no pattern or plan of staff reduction, just across-the-board cuts. Worse, those were job cuts in critical parts of the agency. The Inspector General concluded that staffing levels in jobs with security, medical, and life safety responsibilities declined nearly 8% over the life of the hiring freeze. Those jobs were important, according to the Inspector General, because they play, now this is the Inspector General speaking, a role in ensuring the protection of department employees. Remember when, yes, the Republicans insisted that our security be, those costs be reduced at embassies and consulates around the world. And then Benghazi happened, and who did they blame? Hillary Clinton. Now we're talking about a hiring freeze that actually caused more danger to not just employees of the United States, but citizens of the United States here and abroad. What are we going to do about it? Well, there is an election coming up, hopefully on paper ballots. Let's get on with our break, and when we come back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. The Food and Drug Administration has to recall hundreds of foods every year, like cookie snack packs with chunks of blue plastic hiding inside, or salmonella-tainted taco seasoning, or curry powder laced with lead. It can take months before a recall is issued, but now researchers have come up with a method that might fast-track that process, leading to early detection and ultimately faster recalls. The system relies on the fact that people increasingly buy foods and spices online, and people tend to write reviews of products they buy online, which are like breadcrumbs to food safety officials sniffing out dangerous products. The researchers linked FDA food recalls from 2012 to 2014 to Amazon reviews of those same products. They then trained machine learning algorithms to differentiate between reviews for recalled items and reviews for items that had not been flagged. And the trained algorithms were able to predict FDA recalls 3/4 of the time. They also identified another 20,000 reviews for possibly unsafe foods, most of which had never been recalled. The results are in the Journal of the American Medical Informatics Association. The World Health Organization estimates that 600 million people worldwide get sick annually from contaminated food, and more than 400,000 people die from it.
And so having tools that can enable us to detect this a lot faster and hopefully investigate and do recalls faster would be useful, not just in the U.S., but in other countries around the world as well.
Study author Elaine Nsoyasi of Boston University. She did add one caveat. Even recalled products can still get 5-star reviews. So stars alone don't tell the whole sickening story. The proof, unfortunately, may still be in the pudding. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwan is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-hee. I've been talking today with Seung-hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
It's now pedal to the metal, full speed ahead on executions by the United States government. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. It has been over 16 years since a federal prisoner was strapped down to a gurney in a death chamber, but the Department of Justice has just announced that in December it will begin killing federal prisoners again, and indeed has scheduled 5 executions for December and January. In considering the death penalty, it's important to appreciate that you don't get to execute the person who you, perhaps, think should die. Rather, the government has to construct and maintain an entire system, an enormous apparatus of death, which history proves will fail over and over again. Because, as studies show, the death penalty is not a deterrent. It makes mistakes. It executes the innocent. It's racist and expensive and inhumane. And our government killing people with premeditation diminishes us all. Most countries, 170 of the 194 in the United Nations, have abolished the death penalty, either in law or in practice. And 25 of the 50 states have abolished capital punishment or imposed a moratorium. But our federal government now intends to do everything within its power to kill people, to prove that killing people is wrong. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. That was the day that 35 journalists of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer walked off the job. They represented about half of the newspaper's newsroom staff at the time. The strike started because the paper had fired 2 longtime employees, drama critic Everhart Armstrong and head photographer Frank Slim Lynch. The 2 had joined the American Newspaper Guild, a union for newspaper employees that had begun in 1933. Management claimed the firings were due to the 2 employees' poor job performance and insubordination. But Armstrong had worked for the paper for 17 years, and Lynch for 15 years before joining the union. The Seattle paper was owned by the newspaper giant William Randolph Hearst. Hearst was known for his anti-union, anti-communist, anti-Roosevelt stances. The strike was thus a battle between a few dozen journalists and this national opinion maker. Even though the numbers of workers on strike were small, the cause won the support of other labor unions. The Teamsters refused to deliver newsprint to the Post-Intelligencer. Longshoremen, metal workers, and lumber workers joined the newspapermen on the picket line. The strike wore on for 3.5 months, and the paper was shut down. Many in the public supported the newspapermen. The strikers put out their own newspaper. They called it the Guild Daily. It included updates on the strike, as well as general news and sports coverage. The circulation of the strike paper reached 60,000 a day. Finally, President Franklin Roosevelt won a landslide re-election victory. Perhaps recognizing the mood of the nation was swinging toward the working man, management decided to settle the strike. Today, the Newspaper Guild has 34,000 members throughout the United States and Canada. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around, 90 to 92 degrees, a tad warmer than that, I presume, here at the mothership. Currently, we are under fair, partly cloudy conditions. Winds are light and variable out of the southeast, and we'll be picking up at about 5 to 10 miles per hour in a couple of hours, and have shifted out of the northwest, shifting ever so slightly out of the northwest tonight, remaining at that 5 to 10 mile per hour clip, and continuing so tomorrow, where we are expecting highs in the mid-90s, maybe a tad warmer. Very, 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 very low chance of precipitation, though we always hold out, even if it's just 10%. Overnight lows will be in the low to mid-60s. Grass pollen is now rated at low. The air quality index is in the good range at 23 parts per million. And that daytime UV index remains very high at 8. Locally, barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.87 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. And relative humidity is at 82%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 72 and sunny. Paris is 70 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 92 and sunny with a heat advisory. The gelato will be melting. Kiev is 94 and fair. Really? That hot and it's fair? Kabul is 86 and fair. It's not very fair when drones are blowing up your wedding party march. On a fair day, how fair is that? Hong Kong is 85 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 85 and partly cloudy with its own heat advisory. My gosh. Sydney, Australia, in the dead of winter, is 48 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California, in the dead of their summer, is 57 degrees and clear. And New York, is a balmy 77 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Desai Martin of Shareblue Media brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Chris Wyrick flashes white power signs, wears clothes with the logos of white supremacist organizations, and describes GOP Representative Duncan Hunter of California as a great man and a friend. CQ Roll Call reported yesterday, Monday. But when Roll Call asked Hunter about his relationship with Wyrick, after a photo of the two of them together was posted on Hunter's Facebook page, Hunter struggled to come up with an answer. At first, a Hunter staffer described Wyrick as a stranger in a parade who just wanted a photo with a congressman. But Roll Call uncovered a 2017 video with Wyrick describing Hunter as a friend and a great man. In the same video, Wyrick says, "People can call me a white supremacist all they want. I wear that label as soon as I wake up in the morning." Wow, I bet you gargle with it too, don't you, pal? Don't you? In another photo without Hunter, Weyrich is wearing shorts with the logo of the American Guard, categorized as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center and described as hardcore white supremacists by the Anti-Defamation League. After a roll call asked again about his relationship with Weyrich, Hunter's staff backtracked and gave a different answer. The new answer from Hunter's Deputy Chief of Staff, Michael Harrison, was that Hunter and Weyrich are both from the small town of Alpine and had seen each other at events around town. Harrison insisted that Hunter is not friends with this individual, but clearly they are not strangers, as the staff initially said. Given Hunter's racist campaign against his likely 2020 opponent, Amar Kampar-Najjar, a friendship with a white supremacist would not be all that surprising. In a recent mailer, Hunter implied that Najjar, a Christian, is linked to Islamic terrorists and a danger to America. Aside from his questionable relationship with a proud white supremacist, Hunter is also facing legal trouble. Last year, he was indicted for misusing campaign funds to live a lavish lifestyle, including expensive family vacations, nights out to the theater, and even flying his family's pet bunny across the country. Hop, hop. His wife, who was his campaign manager, pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors soon after she said she would. Prosecutors released evidence showing Hunter used campaign funds to carry out multiple affairs, including at least one with a lobbyist and another with a staffer. Do not anger your wife. Hunter's relationship with a white supremacist is only the latest in a string of embarrassing stories focused on Hunter's misdeeds, which we focus with laser precision here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Brazilian federal prosecutors filed a court injunction seeking to bar the appointment of right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro's son, Eduardo, as ambassador to the United States due to his lack of experience as a diplomat. Well, that never stopped Trump from appointing whoever he wants, even to the UN. Oh, pretty Fox News spokesmodel? Put her there, yeah. The public prosecutor's office asked a Brasilia court to rule on the need for non-diplomats to have relevant international experience and serve the nation abroad for at least 3 years. Bolsonaro, who has developed close ties with Trump since taking office, has defended the appointment of his son, saying he is a friend of Trump's family, which would help improve relations between the two nations. Send him some love letters, Mr. President. You can have your son deliver them. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. We're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.